Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dhyanenatmani pashyanti,
ध्यानेनात्मनि पश्यन्ति
kechid atmanam atmana,
केचित् आत्मा आत्मना
anye sankhyenna yogena,
अन्य साखेन योगेन
karma yogena chapare.
कर्म योगेन च परे. Translation. Some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires. Purport. The Lord informs Arjuna that the conditioned souls can be divided into two classes as far as man's search for self-realization is concerned. Those who are atheists, agnostics, and skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. But there are others who are faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees. Philosophers and workers who have renounced fruitive results, those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism, are also counted among the atheists and agnostics. In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding because they understand that beyond this material world are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Super Soul in everyone, the all pervading Godhead. Of course, there are those who try to understand the supreme absolute truth by cultivation of knowledge, and they can be counted in the class of the faithful. The Sankhya philosophers analyze the material world into 24 elements, and they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to understand also that about the individual soul there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the 26th element. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in their attitude. They are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out the super soul by meditation. And when they discover the super soul within themselves, they become transcendently situated. Similarly, there are others who also try to understand the supreme soul by cultivation of knowledge, and there are others who cultivate the hatha yoga system and who try to satisfy the supreme personality of Godhead by childish activities.
Childish activities. So, Krishna is here continuing to tell to Arjuna about the Paramatma. So, he's saying that some can understand the Paramatma is there through the process of yoga, meditation, some through the process of knowledge, gyan, and some through, giving up the desire of the result of the work. When we give up the desire to enjoy the result of our work, then that creates some kind of a detachment in us. And then we are able to perceive the super soul. So here, Prabhupada is explaining there are two types of transcendentalists. There are transcendentalists, one who are the devotees who understand that God is a person, he has a form. They are called introspective, and they are working for the pleasure of God. Now, there are others who are always saying that there is only one, that there is one, and then that everyone is that one. But this is kind of covered atheism because it denies the existence, the supremacy of God. God is the supreme person. And so denying that in whatever way is like kind of a covered atheism. So the devotees, they are they have the perfect knowledge. They have perfect knowledge that, oh, we are the soul, and that the soul is not equal to God, but is a part of God, and that the soul needs to go back to the spiritual world and over there associate with God, be with God. And the devotees also understand that the Paramatma is an expansion of God. That's how God is omnipresent in his Paramatma feature. Yet, God is also in the spiritual world, in his personal form. So, anyway, those who are trying to understand the truth by the process of Gyan are also faithful, because then the desire is to understand the truth and not to become someone that we are not. But as long as the desire is there to understand the truth, then one is faithful. So the Sankhya philosophers, we had heard earlier, the Sankhya philosophers, how they break down the material world into 24 elements. You know, this material world that we are so attached to, that we are so much infatuated with, if we break it down, it is 24 elements. You know, all these different types of shapes and forms and colors, everything. These are the material elements. Now, the Sankhya philosophers say the 25th item is the soul and the 26th is the super soul. So, gradually, if one is really true to the Sankhya philosophy, they will come to the point of Krishna, Krishna consciousness, devotional service. As long as one is sincere to understand the truth, not putting our own beliefs, but willing to understand what is the truth. So, and then when the devotee, when he's working not with the desire to enjoy the results, but for the pleasure of Krishna. Or those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in that. Well, one may not understand that they have to give up the work for Krishna, but if one is giving up the desire, not the desire to work, the desire to enjoy the result of the work, they also can gradually come up to Krishna consciousness, because they are giving up the attachment to the result. You know, we get very attached to the result of our work. Like, oh, I have done this, it's more for my pleasure. But, well, Krishna is saying you do it. You first offer it to me, and then you enjoy it. Like cooking. We want to eat something, we cook it, we first offer to Krishna, then we eat. So that gradually brings kind of well, of course, the prasad, it's spiritual, it helps us in our devotional advancement. So then again, there are some uh, who are doing the yoga process, and then they also, by sitting in meditation, they are able to see the super soul there. And then some are trying to understand the super soul by the cultivation of knowledge. And then there are others who are trying to cultivate the hatha yoga system. So we can see that how different classes of transcendentalists are trying to search out the super soul who's in our heart. You know, Krishna is saying the yogis, those with meditation, those who are in the path of knowledge, also those who are working and giving up the attachment to the result, they come to understand the super soul. So we have to understand we are not the super soul. Krishna, his expansion is the super soul, Paramatma. We are the Atma. We are different. Anyetvam ajananta.
Anyate evam achananta.
Shrutvan yebhya upasate.
Shruta vanya yeva upasate.
Tepi chate taranti eva.
Tepi chate ranteva eva.
Mrityum shruti parayana.
Mrityum shruti paranyana. Translation. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, began to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Purport. Purport, yeah. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement of by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially according to Lord Chaitanya. If he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age, no one needs to change in his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse, particularly the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend to this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home.
Will help one transcend this material existence. Okay. So, and then Krishna is saying those who begin to worship God, or begin to worship Krishna. How? By hearing about him. By hearing about him. By hearing about him from the devotees. And in this way, one can go back home, back to God, at hearing and chanting. This is very applicable to us. So, because this is what gives us an opportunity to get out of this material world. We do not have long lives now. Like people used to live in Satyug for 100,000 years, so they could do the meditation, the yoga process. We don't have that kind of life. Also, over here, right now, uh, knowledge, we are not able to understand much because we are Kalyug people. If we go through the process of knowledge, and Krishna says that Bahunam Janmanamante, if you're going to take the process of knowledge, it takes up lifetimes and lifetimes. So Krishna wants us to come directly to the platform of bhakti and then make this life the last life in the material world. So Krishna came himself 500 years ago as Lord Chaitanya. And he gave us this Krishna consciousness. He gave great stress to hearing from the authorities, hearing from the pure devotees who are coming in the parampara. We have to understand who we are hearing from. Because if we, for example, if we want to become a doctor, we can't just read something from the internet, hear from some people, buy some textbook by ourselves, and then say, okay, I've become a doctor. Nobody's going to come to us for their treatment. But yeah, if we find out a university which is authorized by the medical board, we go there, we approach the teachers, we learn under the teachers, then we practice under a certified doctor, then we can become a doctor. And actually, people will come to us for their treatment. So, hearing, we need to understand who do we need to hear from. We need to find out who are the pure devotees, the devotees who are coming in the disciplic succession, coming in the parampara. Authoritative sources. That's why it's mentioned hearing from authoritative sources. And by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So if we can make someone hear this Hare Krishna chanting, then one can make great spiritual advancement. It's a transcendental vibration. So advantage to hearing from the pure devotees, and then that will give us the real knowledge. We will be able to understand the absolute truth to whatever degree the absolute truth reveals himself to us. And then we will be able to worship God. Lord Chaitanya says to understand God, we don't need to give up. We don't need to change our position. We continue doing what we are doing. It's okay, but just adhering and chanting. Yeah, give up the idea that I'm going to try to understand absolute truth by my own mind or by speculative, but hear from the pure devotees. Serve them. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord, to serve the devotees. And then here Prabhupada is saying, if one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually be elevated to the position of a pure devotee. So search out a pure devotee, then take shelter of them, hear from him, serve him, follow the instructions. Just as we just said, no, we want to become a doctor. So we search out a university. We go, we learn under the teachers. Then we train under authorized doctor. Then we will get that certificate that, oh, I'm certified to be a doctor. So if one really wants to understand spirituality, spiritual knowledge, one wants to understand who is God, what's our relationship with him, then we need to hear from the pure devotees, serve the devotees, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And in this way, one can go back home, back to Godhead. Yavat sanjayate kinche
Yavat Sanjayada Kirisid
Sattvam Sthavara Jangamam
Satvam Sarva Jaganam
Kshetragya Samyogat
Kshetra Shetyajana Samayogat
Tat Vidhi Bharata Shaba.
Tadvidi Bharatarshaba. Translation. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Purport. Both material nature and the living entity, which were existing before the creation of the cosmos, are explained in the verse. Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and the material nature. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving, but there are many existences which are moving, and all of them are but combinations of the material nature and the superior nature. The living entity, without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. The relationship between material nature and the spiritual nature is eternally going on. And this combination is effected by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, He is the controller of both the superior and the inferior natures. The material nature is created by Him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature. And thus, all these activities and manifestations take place.
So here in this material world, here Krishna is saying that whatever we are seeing here is a combination of matter and the soul, matter and spirit. Whatever we are seeing. That's why he's saying field of activities. That's the matter, and the knower of the field, that's the soul. Material nature and the superior energy, superior nature, that is the soul. Whatever we are seeing, is a combination. We may see, for example, a tree. So the body of a tree is matter, but there's a soul inside the tree. Right? And then there are the mountains, that's matter. There are hills. Well, some mountains also have the souls. But anyway, they're human beings, for example. We have a combination. Our body is made of matter. We are the soul inside. We are moving about. So everything that we are seeing in this material world, there is either the material nature or the soul, or a combination of both. This is what Krishna is explaining to us. And how this thing is happening is by God. The material nature belongs to Him. We, the spirit souls, belong to Him. He creates this material nature and puts us here inside this material nature. So all this is affected by the Supreme Lord, God, because He's creating this material world and He is placing us inside this material world. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu
Sama sarvesu bhutesu
tishthantam parameshwaram
tistantam parameshwaram
vinash yatsav avinashyantam
vinastasam avinasantam
ya pashyati sa pashyati.
ya pashyati sa pashyati. Translation. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed actually sees. Purport. Anyone who by good association can see three things combined together: the body, the proprietor of the body or individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul is actually in knowledge. Unless one has the association of the real knower of spiritual subject, one cannot see these three things. Those who do not have such association are ignorant. They simply see the body and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually, it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist and they go on eternally in many various moving and non moving forms. The Sanskrit word Parameshwara is sometimes translated as the individual soul because the soul is the master of the body, and after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another form. In that way, he is master. But there are others who interpret this Parameshwara to be the super soul. In either case, both the super soul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening.
So the super soul, the soul, and the body. Krishna is saying if one can understand this, that the body is destroyed, but the soul and super soul are eternal. Then he's actually seeing. So Prabhupada is saying by good association. So when we can associate with the devotees, then we can understand that there is the body is different, the soul is different, and the friend of the soul, that is the super soul, is different. And this is really knowledge. One can understand this, then one is actually has knowledge, real know of subject, of spiritual subject. So it is by association with the devotees that one will be able to understand this. We are thinking that, oh, I'm the body, and once the body is finished, then, everything is destroyed. But no, after the body is finished, the soul and super soul live, they exist eternally. After the body is finished, the soul and the super soul will go into another body. Then after that, into another body, into another body, into another body. They exist eternally. The super soul accompanies the soul till the time he is in the material world. For the entire time, the super soul exists, the individual soul. So we have to understand the soul and super soul are different. It's not one, it's two. There are two personalities. Because we are spiritual, we are eternal. Krishna spoke about that in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In fourth chapter, he says, never was there a time I did not exist, nor you, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So eternal in the past, eternal existing in the past, existing now, and it will continue to exist as individuals in the future. As we are existing as individuals in the present, we continue to exist as individuals in the future. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra.
Samham pasyani hi sarvatra.
Samavastitam Ishwaram.
Samavastitam Ishwaram.
Na hinasti atmanatmanam.
Na hinasti atma atmanam.
Tato yati param gatam.
Tato yati param gatam. Translation. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. Purport. The living entity, by accepting his material existence, has become situated differently than in his spiritual existence. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in its Paramatma manifestation everywhere, that is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living thing, he does not degrade himself by a destructive mentally, and he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world. The mind is generally addicted to sense gratifying process, but when the mind turns to the super soul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. So, one who can see? Sorry. Okay, one who can see the super soul present everywhere. In every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. Because the Paramatma, he's there in everyone's heart, in each and everyone's heart. He's sitting with us. If we can see that, then we will stop degrading ourselves with our mind. If we can understand, oh, God is there in this one's heart, that one's heart, in everyone's heart, if we are able to understand that, if we can perceive, if we can see the presence of God in every being's heart, then of course our thought process is going to be completely different. and one can go back to the spiritual world. If one can see every living entity as a part and parcel of Krishna, then we make progress to the spiritual world. So how can we come to that part? We need to continue to hear and chant. How can we come to this position? We need to hear from the devotees, from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Prakrityeva cha karmani
Prakritava karmani
kriyamanani sarvasha
kriyamanani sarvasha
ya pashyati tathatmanam
ya pashyati tatananam
akartaram sapashyati.
akartaram sapasyati. Translation: one who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Purport: this body is made by material nature under the directions of the super soul, and whatever activities are going in respect to one's body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to be because of the bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. To fulfill desires, one is given the body, with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer.
So this body is given to us by material nature. Material nature, she is Krishna's energy. She is the energy of God. So it's under the direction of God that we get this material body. And then when we are in any particular body, we act according to the modes of nature. The material body is under the control of the modes. That's the reason when we are, for example, in the body of a dog, we walk on 4 legs. When we are in the body of a human being, we walk on 2 legs. We stand up and walk. We're for whatever the modes of nature, or we eat. In the human form, we pick up the food. As a dog, we just put food. We put our mouth into the food. This is the laws. They are put there by the modes of nature. But the soul is different. Sometimes we are in body of a dog, sometimes in body of a human being. And we get this body depending on our past desires. What was our desire? To fulfill our desire, we are given another body. We have so many desires, and of course, desire and our karma. So, based on our desire and karma, we are getting newer and newer bodies in this material world. To fulfill our desire, God gives us a suitable body. Somebody has a desire to enjoy in a particular way, then one gets particular body to enjoy in a suitable way. It's said, like, for example, one likes to eat meat. So then Mother Nature says, okay, then I'll give you the body of a lion, which is more suitable to eating meat. Things like that. So what is our desire? Based on that, we are getting different bodies. Mm. So understanding that the soul is separate from the body, then one can actually see whether the soul is in the dog body or human being body or lion body is the same soul, individual soul. But then we can see that, okay, how in chapter 5, the learned Brahmana, he's seeing that there's a cow, there's a cow eater, there's a dog, there's a cow, dog eater, elephant. What he's seeing is the soul everywhere. He's not seeing the different bodies. He's understanding the Paramatma is in everyone's heart, and he's understanding these are all individual souls taking on different body based on whatever desires one has had in the past, based on whatever karma one has done in the past. So this is actually knowledge, to understand that inside the body there is the Paramatma, the super soul, and the individual soul. And the bodies are the different dresses that we are getting based on our past desire and past karma. Yada bhuta prathak bhavam
Yada bhuta pratak bhavam
ekastam anupashyate
ekastam anupashyate
tat eva cha vistaram
tat eva cha vistaram
brahma sampadyate tada.
Brahma sampadyate tada. Translation: when a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanding everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Purport: when one can see that the various bodies of the living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul and do not actually belong to the soul itself, one actually sees in the material conception of life. We find someone a demigod, someone a human being, a dog, a cat, etc. This is material vision, not actual vision. This material differentiation is due to a material conception of life. After the destruction of the material body, the spirit and soul is one. The spirit soul
The
due
spirit
to
soul. The spirit soul is
the,
one, no spirit and soul.
the
Mhm.
spirit soul is one. The spirit soul due to contact with material nature gets different types of bodies. One can see this, he attains spiritual vision, thus being freed from differentiations like man, animal, big, low, etc. One becomes purified in this consciousness of and able to develop Krishna consciousness in his spiritual identity. How he then sees things will be explained in the next verse.
So as we said that the one in knowledge, he's seeing that it's the soul, that these are not different. That when one is seeing, one is a dog, as we just said earlier, there is a dog, there's an elephant, there is a brahmana, there is a dog eater. So one who is actually in knowledge sees that the Paramatma is in everyone's heart, and he's seeing that they are all individual souls, and they are just right now in different bodies because of past desire and past karma. This is how one can get liberated. If one can understand that, that somebody is in a demigod body, somebody is in a human being body, somebody is in a dog body, a cat body, but these are all individual souls. And the body, we are just getting based on our desire. Whatever is the desire, based on that, we get a body. So if one can actually see this, then one can be on the spiritual platform. So, anaditwan nirgunatvat
Anadivata nirgunatavat
parmatma yam avyaya
parmatam avyava
sharirasthopi kaunteya
saritarastopi konteya
karoti na lipyate.
na karoti na lipyate. Translation. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. Purport. A living entity appears to be born because of the birth of the material body, but actually the living entity is eternal. He is not born, and in spite of his being situated in material body, he is transcendental and eternal. Thus, he cannot be destroyed by nature. He is full of bliss. He does not engage himself in any material activity. Therefore, the activities performed due to his contact with material bodies do not entangle him.
So now Krishna is giving further information of the soul. Now we are celebrating our birthday every year because we think we came into existence at that time. But it's the body, it's the time, it's the body that came into existence. But we, the soul, we are eternal. And then one day we die. We are going to die. But it doesn't mean that the soul will die. It doesn't mean that we are going to die. We are only going to give up this body to take up another body. So the soul, we are the soul, and the soul is eternal, cannot be destroyed. The soul is spiritual, transcendental. So the soul is never born and never dies. Krishna speaks about this in the second chapter in Bhagavad Gita. And the soul is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss, full of knowledge. Is always happy, the soul. So we have to understand that we are different from the body. We are different. We are inside the body. You know, it's like how there's a gold ring and the gold ring falls down into the sewer. So the gold ring just gets covered by all the dirt. But the gold itself, the gold ring remains intact. It's not the gold ring doesn't exist anymore or it's become changed into dirt. No. If we just clean it up, we wash it up, and then we will be able to see the gold ring again. Similarly, we are the soul. We are eternally the soul. We are right now with this material consciousness. That's why we have the material body. But once the consciousness is clean, then we can be in our own spiritual body. And how to clean the consciousness? Then we hear from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yatha sarva gatam sakshmyad.
Yata sarva gatam sauksmya.
Akasham nopalipyate.
Akasham nopalya patpite peyate.
Sarvatra vasthito dehe.
Sarvatra vastito dehe.
Tathatma nopalipyate.
Tata atma nopalya patpate. Translation. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahma vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Purport. The air enters into water, mud, stool, and whatever else is there, still it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of body, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body and how he is out of it, rather the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this.
So as we just gave the example, no? The gold ring. gets covered by the dirt of the sewer. It doesn't mean the gold ring has that the gold doesn't exist anymore and it's become the dirty things. No. So similarly, the soul, we are inside the body. It doesn't mean that we have become the body. No, we are just inside the body. That's it. Here Prabhupada is giving the example of air. Air is entering into mud, into stool, into water, but air is air. It doesn't get affected by what it's coming in touch with. So the soul is the soul. Even we are put inside the body, we always remain the soul. The soul never changes. Soul is eternal. Yatha prakashyati eka
Yata prakashyati eka
Kritsnam lokam imam ravi
Kritsam lokam ima ravi
Kshetram Kshetri tatha Kritsnam
Kshetram Kshetri tata Krishnam
Prakashyati Bharata.
Prakashyati Bharata. Translation: O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity. One within the body illuminates the entire body by consciousness. Purport: there are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of the sun and the sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul, as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by any intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of nature. It is the symptom of the living entity. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the supreme consciousness, is not supreme because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body, but the super soul, which is situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies. That is the difference between supreme consciousness and individual consciousness.
So, consciousness. Life comes from life. Life does not come from matter. So, like, for example, Prabhupada is giving example, the sun is there, and then from there, the sun, the sunshine, and like that, the sunshine, the whole universe is being illuminated. Right? So similarly, the soul is in the heart of the body, and by this soul, this whole body is having consciousness. It's a consciousness. Now, what's the difference between a dead body and a living body? Consciousness. So we can see that consciousness is not material. It's a symptom of the soul. There is a difference between a living body and a dead body. And that's why so much value is given to the living body. We are willing to spend so much money to get cured while we are inside the body. But once the body is dead, then nobody matters. No, we are trying to um, like either bury it or burn it or something as soon as possible. So the consciousness is there when one is living. Now we, the soul, we are the individual soul. So our consciousness is also individual. Whereas the Paramatma, he is in the heart of everyone. So he is supremely conscious. We are individually conscious because we are individual soul. We are only in one body at one time. But the Paramatma is in everyone's body at all the time as the friend. So this is a difference between our consciousness, individual consciousness, and supreme consciousness. So we are not supremely conscious. Our consciousness is only that we are of this particular body. And we cannot understand the consciousness of another body. But the super soul can, the Paramatma can. He's there in everyone's body as the friend. So he's conscious of all the bodies. So there is a difference. There's a difference between the soul and the super soul. There's a difference between Jivatma and Paramatma. We are individually conscious, and God, He is supremely conscious. That's the difference. And eternally so. We are eternally individually conscious. It's not that we'll change after we get liberated. No, we are eternal. The meaning of being eternal is we are unchangeable. The soul never changes. The soul never dies. The soul is eternal, eternally and individual. So we are eternally individually conscious. And God, He is eternally supremely conscious. So we'll stop here for today. Thank you so much for listening and enjoying it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki